Welcome to the Productivity Podcast. This is the first in our series Basket and Barometer, which is renamed from Footfall Insights with Diane Worrell. Welcoming back, Diane. How are you doing?
I'm very good, Simon. How are you?
Good. We've both been away and all sorts of things, so we're going to catch up on 2 months today, aren't we? September and October. Lots going on, and at the time of recording, we are a couple of days away from the budget. I don't know if I'm not looking forward to it. I'm keen to know what's in it, but I'm not looking forward to it. So yeah, lots happening in the world, still a bit of political unrest, all those things, Donald Trump weighing in and out of all sorts of things. So consistent theme for, Footfall Insights, and I'm sure for Basket and Barometer moving forward, is that the world's an ever-changing place. We're evolving, aren't we? And being agile and having to make quick decisions, especially in that retail hospitality space.
Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because retail is really challenging this year, but then it's always been challenging. I mean, I've been working in retail for, quite a long time now.
Don't mention years.
I know, exactly. I started very young. And it's never been a case of where we've gone, this is a brilliant economic environment. Even when it was pretty strong, we didn't really appreciate that it was strong because we always had something to groan and moan about. But it is challenging, but retail is still retail. And I was out and about on Saturday and the stores were busy and people were still buying. And albeit they may not be buying in the same quantities and the same values as before, but they're still buying. But, retailers need to be nimble. So we can run through some of the numbers.
We can, but we'll start with the story. I didn't tell you off air because I wanted to tell you on air and gauge your reaction. So I was out and about shopping on Saturday as well in the Trafford Centre in Manchester. And it was very, very busy, probably a bit too busy for my liking. But, we went on a Saturday and it was Black Friday weekend. Really good deals. Went into a well-known sports shop. Bought my son something for Christmas. Queued up about 8 minutes. Not that we measure time particularly accurately, but it was about 8 minutes.
That's just your business.
Yeah, I know. And I was getting a bit frustrated, as was everybody else in the queue, because it was busy. Paid. The lady apologised. Thank you very much. And she said to me these exact words: "Are you paying by card?" I said, "Yes, please." Said, "Press the green button, press the red button, tap your card." What did I do? Press the green button, press the red button, tap my card, because that's what she told me to do. Now, what I was actually doing, because it didn't dawn on me until I came out, because I read the screens and still pressed the buttons. The green button was to say I'd had a great customer experience. And the red button was to say that I didn't want to donate, I think it was 20p, rounding it up to charity.
Oh.
And I kind of came out thinking, I've walked through that, because all I've done is been so frustrated and I want to get out because it's busy. I've done what she's told me to do. But that store looks like it's going to have a great customer experience on that Saturday. All the staff will be happy, the senior leadership will be happy, head office will be happy. And in reality, it wasn't. And the poor charity, they're just telling everybody to press the red button. So on one hand, it looks good that you've got this great experience. On the other hand, there's this poor charity saying, we're not getting many donations from this retailer. I wonder why. Yeah, it was just a point of, you've got to sell to your existing customers because it's hard to get new ones. But don't always believe the hype of the data. If you're working in a retailer, you've got to go and see it.
Absolutely. I mean, retail is people, isn't it? It's about relationships. And what they've done essentially is soured your opinion of them for the future, which is a very short-term method of working, really, because you will think twice about shopping in there again.
Yeah. And the irony was the lady on the till was very good, very polite, apologetic. The experience at the till was okay. The overall experience, I waited too long. But their data will show, not that it would have named me, but in my contribution, that it was fine.
Yes.
So what are you going to do differently? Nothing.
No, exactly. But she'll get a great pat on the back and probably a bonus.
Yeah, exactly. And they might be incentivized against it. I don't know. But I think my wider point was in an environment where it's really difficult to get new customers and even retain the ones you've got, kidding yourself that something's good when the reality was something very, very different. What action are you going to take on it? Well, probably none, because you think it's all right.
Absolutely. Well, sometimes it's a lot cheaper and a lot quicker and a lot easier, isn't it, not to do anything at all and just carry on.
Yeah. So I'll monitor. I'll keep an eye on when they're announcing their figures, results. And I'm sure they'll be up and it'll all be great. But the reality will be it's probably not as good as it could be, or not as bigger opportunities there. Yeah. Anyway, that was my interesting recollection from my Saturday shopping on Black Friday. That I say I walked through it and it dawned on me in the way, what have I just done?
I have seen a greater pressure amongst places I've transacted with to leave positive Google reviews as well, actually. In fact, I was in one restaurant, the girl actually filled it in for me. She pressed the button on the stars for me.
Been there before, yeah.
And And I said, hang on a minute, you've just filled that in for me.
Yeah. Well, and that's the problem when it becomes what gets measured gets managed, age-old retail stuff.
Yes.
And I know we're diversifying slightly, but that's the point of this newer updated podcast. I think I've been in places recently where whoever served me has perceived they've given me good service, and they've circled their name on the receipt and said, if you don't mind filling it out, I'm Adam, da 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 da. And I've also been in places where somebody's not been very happy, and guess what? They don't give them something to fill in. So you can, I suppose my wider point, and this isn't just about customer experience surveys generally, you can be very selective in how you distribute, and that has a very, very significant influence on the stats, doesn't it?
It does, and it's very easy these days to collect data. I mean, data, there's so many channels to collect data, so there's inevitably a greater reliance on the data that's collected in an automated way. But actually, if you go back to 20, 30 years ago, a lot of mystery shopping took place, and you get a lot greater insights through that type of approach, where someone's sitting there as a potential customer experiencing it and reporting back on their individual experience. So I think a realistic view on data and processes needs to be taken, but also willingness to change. I mean, I think that has to be the case rather.
And I think that's the point with the point we're both making is if you're playing the system, what that retailer, hospitality company is missing is that feedback that says this didn't work for a number of people on a number of occasions. What can you do differently to make it work for others or those people again? And negative, do differently feedback is probably even more powerful than the this person was amazing, because they're probably always amazing and not everybody recognises them. And it's great. Absolutely. They get some personal recommendation. But anyway, the wider point is if you're not acting on the feedback you get, if it's not true feedback, you can't be different. Therefore, you're only going to keep on getting what you get, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting because the data that Beauclair provides looks at all the different sales metrics, and one of those is average transaction value. And that's a really important metric at the moment because we're seeing continuously the number of transactions and the number of customers drop year on year. So fewer people are buying. We know that. So there's a smaller pool of expenditure for the retailers to take out of. And what they need to be doing is maximising the value of every one of those customers. And I'm actually working with a small town who are utilising Beauclair's data, who have seen a big uplift in their ATV over the last year. Continually, every month virtually, they've seen this big uplift, despite the fact the number of customers and transactions is declining. So they're obviously doing something right, and this uplift is greater than inflation. So it's not just inflationary uplift. It is more than that. So those businesses are actually implementing something that's attracting greater spend from a smaller number of customers. And that can only be good, particularly for a small town that has a constrained catchment area.
Yeah.
So they're doing this. It's a tick in the box for them. And so that's fantastic. And also they're quite an interesting town because they've got a different profile from a standard high street. Fashion isn't a big player for them because they're a small town. Grocery, functional items, household items, health and beauty, and to a lesser extent food and drink. So it's a very different profile from some towns, but they're actually starting to see some growth there, which is really positive. So there are some real shining lights out there that are taking place.
Yeah, and I think we've said it before, and I'll say it again, one of those key metrics for any retailer at the moment, hospitality business, is driving ATV growth. It's much easier to sell to your existing customers than get new ones.
Absolutely. And it's so much more valuable. And, if you have a smaller pool of customers, you start to get to know them and start to personalise the shopping experience to a far greater degree. And everyone's much happier. So that leads us back to the numbers.
Yeah. Let's show me the good news then. That everybody's doing that. It's all in growth. Rachel Reeves has got no worries coming up. September and October were?
Well, let's start with footfall because clearly most places need footfall to survive. And footfall has dropped as it has been doing for decade or more. September dropped by 1.8% and 0.7% across all of retail. In high streets by 2.5% in September annually, but it rose slightly in October by 0.6%. Now, that's great. That means, there were slightly more customers in October this year than there were last year. But is this translating into spending? Not so much. So the BRC, which tracks spending across the entire piece, online, offline, in town, out of town, saw an uplift of 1.6% in sales in October. So, but that's not as great as the rate of inflation, which is sitting at 3.6. So, in real terms, spending has dropped. And Beauclair, who look at spending just in towns and cities, so taking out retail parks, taking out town shopping centres, they saw a decline in both September and October of 4.1% in each month. So, there's challenging times ahead, and therefore for towns and cities. It's been ever thus. If you're feeling insecure about your long-term financial prospects, about your job, and we know employment is now at 5%, and that's the highest since January 2021. People are going to be sitting there feeling very nervous. And of course, as you mentioned, we've got the budget, which at the time we're recording, it's 2 or 3 days away. People are wondering how it's going to impact their own household budget. So they're being, mindful of what they spend, and quite rightly so.
Yeah, so we predicted at our forum a couple of months ago that it would peak at 5%. So it's got there a little bit early. So with what's coming in mind, clearly lots of businesses will make or break in the next couple of months as well, in terms of it being their biggest quarter outside of those companies like DIY that it's Easter. I would suggest that it's going to be higher than 5%, maybe even touch 6% then coming next year.
I agree. I mean, the unemployment rate is not going to increase rapidly in the next month or so, because people want to retain their staff for Christmas. But once whatever is in the budget comes to fruition, and whether that be the increase in the national living wage,
VAT, there it's all on the table, isn't it?
That is going to it's going to come to bear in a couple of months' time. So, we get through Christmas, get through New Year, and it's sort of Feb, March time that we're going to start to see again some more increases in unemployment.
And there was a big pullback in graduate courses, I think, announced this year from, all the big consulting houses, all the big motor manufacturers.
Yeah.
So then you've got, I suppose, that tailwind of uni leavers come, April, May, June, that hit the market, and there's just no jobs there again.
Absolutely. I mean, grad jobs are harder to come by than they have been for a long, long time. And, and also at the same time, when grad jobs were hard to come by, a lot of graduates went and did some temporary work in bars and pubs and restaurants, and they're cutting back on unemployment as well. So it's really tough out there for a lot of people. So it isn't surprising that spending has been very subdued. Having said that, we're now looking toward Black Friday, which is the end of this week as we record. And I don't know about you, but my inbox has been flooded with Black Friday offers, as it always is, I have to say. But it is clearly a much longer period than it was in the past, and we know this now. And I wouldn't say it's a Black Friday month, but it's certainly at least a week, if not 2 or 3. Looking sort of forward to where we are likely to be this Black Friday versus last Black Friday is quite interesting, because actually last Black Friday was actually very strong in terms of sales in towns and cities. They were 1.8% up on 2023. So my forecast for Black Friday, which I put together just before the beginning of Q4, was saying that we were anticipating that sales would be down by 1% year on year. But that still may come to fruition, because actually there's been a fair bit of discounting out there. So, we're expecting a better month than October, but not as great a month as last year.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a lot of electrical discounting, things like PlayStations. The 5's the cheapest they've ever been, certainly your white goods. Probably not so much, I know we talked about it before, in terms of that furniture space. There's more blanket discounts of 20% off here and there. But the one thing that I have seen, I don't know if you've seen it a lot more this year, is in those emails I'm getting and we guarantee this price won't be any cheaper in our sale.
Yeah. Yes.
So that giving the consumer that confidence that you can buy it now, that's fine, don't wait, because clearly the sooner the retailer can get the money, the better.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think actually what is happening now is that everyone was talking for years and years and years about Black Friday bringing Christmas forward. I think it's most definitely that. And I think actually the peak that we used to experience just before Christmas, that run up to Christmas, I think that's going to become much more subdued. It's going to be sort of stocking fillers and, that sort of thing. And people are going to use that last week for a bit of leisure shopping rather than the full-on Christmas shopping that used to take place, because they are going to maximise the discounting available through Black Friday. So really, in terms of what you guys do in terms of looking at productivity of staffing and efficiencies, retailers need to be laying it on thick around now. And actually definitely. Probably then easing off as you get towards Christmas, because now's peak.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of I call it the iPhone rush years ago. We do a lot in telco, and there was that massive peak. I can't remember when it is, end of September, is it start of October, when the iPhone got launched, and it's non-existent now because it's all done online. You pre-order it, you go and click and collect, you have it delivered. So, but that really helps them because it flattens their staffing profile, which makes a massive difference. And actually, everybody still gets their iPhone, so it's not a bad thing.
No, for retailers themselves, I mean, obviously they're looking to future-proof themselves, and quite rightly so. They're looking to add processes and become much more streamlined and make sure all those additional NI costs don't hit them again and again and again. Not so great for retail employment, of course, and future longevity of jobs, but better for the retail sustainability.
And are there any particular sectors? I know, again, we've talked about health and beauty before, where it's kind of been relatively stable. Certainly the more considered purchases, so furniture's tracked not particularly well. Are those still consistent, or are there any movers and shakers?
Well, in October, health and beauty had a bit of a torrid time. The ATV went up by 3.1%, which is still below inflation, but transactions dropped by over 8%, customers dropped by 6%. So we can see that people were really starting to pull back on those discretionary purchases. Fashion, interestingly, transaction dropped by 2%, customers by 2.6%. So fewer people were buying, but it wasn't this huge drop, but they've come from a much lower base. They've had these big drops. And at the same time, their ATV dropped by 2%. So that's reflecting really the discounting that's been happening in fashion.
And it's still, everywhere's Christmas party dresses and stuff. And everyone I speak to in pretty much every organisation we work with says, we don't really have a Christmas party anymore. They give us X each colleague and you do what you want. It's less HR hassle, less people hassle. So that, I don't know if big Christmas do still exist. I'm out of the loop of it.
I mean, I'm sure they do. I've spoken to some of my friends and some of them who work for big corporates. They do have a Christmas party, but it's certainly a lot less because people are working from home. So getting people together, it's much more expensive. People need to stay in hotels and all that sort of stuff than they used to. So, and I think people are a bit more mindful about their time and the costs and doing it and how they're going to, manage that in terms of family life. So you're right. I don't think the Christmas party is as big a deal as it used to be. And I think, fashion's sort of just expecting to be discounting now, really. It's just part of the course. I think we all need to be a little bit sceptical when we see the discount labels go on because they're probably not actually being discounted at all.
Yeah, it could be made to discount.
Absolutely.
Any other insights that you want to share before you have a quick think about December?
Well, I mean, only another element that we need to think about when we're looking at a whole piece is consumer confidence, and that's bumbling along at the bottom still. It hasn't improved. It dropped to, it's from the summer, it decreased, it dropped away, and it's not really gotten back. It's sitting, the GfK index sitting at -19 now in November, and their months are slightly off kilter. So their November is mid-October to mid-November. October is -17, September -19. So it's sort of bumbling along at the bottom. So it's just reinforcing everything we know, really. All the indicators are saying the same thing, that it's tough out there and people aren't spending money and feeling nervous. So, there isn't anything that is surprising, particularly. No. Internet sales as a proportion of total retail sales is sort of sitting there or thereabouts. In October, it was 28.1% of all retail spending was online. A slight increase from September, which is 27.5%, but it's still sitting just over a quarter of all retail spends online. So, but interestingly, food stores, online food, doesn't shift away from 9.6% of total food spending. The vast majority of us go into store and buy our food and have always done and probably always will continue to do that. So, but it's clothing really, and that's sitting sort of 29% of total clothing spend online. But again, it's increased slightly, but not massively. Slight movement upwards towards the 30%. And people are saying it's going to top out at about 30% or so. So we shall see for that.
Excellent. Well, we head into the golden quarter though, don't we? So we're kind of high stakes now for those that have got everything placed in this period, I think. So any insight, any predictions you've made for kind of the December and festive period start of sale?
Yeah, I mean, November's going to be the stronger month of the quarter, the strongest month of the quarter, but it's not going to be amazing. I did forecast an increase in December, I have to say, just because December was so shockingly bad last year.
Yeah.
But we'll have to wait and see. That was done before the budget furore kicked off. So that has changed really the narrative a little bit. So we shall see. I was only forecasting 1.5% increase in sales in December from last year. But last year was very poor at nearly 8% down. So, we shall see. We shall see whether we bounce back a little bit in December. But hopefully, I think November with Black Friday might be quite strong.
Yeah, I must say, look, when I was at the weekend around Manchester, there was a lot of people, almost to the point where you thought, it's probably the busiest I've seen Trafford Centre. I don't go that often, but there were a lot of people and a lot of people with bags, which was good to see. People enjoying themselves in the leisure part as well. So fingers crossed for all those out there who it's their key period. We've hopefully given you a couple of things to think about and a consistent theme throughout the various iterations of this podcast. So fingers crossed, Di, and we'll reconvene once more before Christmas, and hopefully that's got some Black Friday info in, and then it's over to everybody else to deliver over Christmas.
Absolutely. We'll see each other post-budget.
Brilliant. Thanks, Di.
Take care.